A personality is not supposed to survive death. The collection of memories, triumphs, and traumas that makes a person who they are should fade with their last breath. But what if it doesn't? What if the soul of a World War II pilot, complete with memories of his final fiery crash, could be reborn in the body of a toddler in Louisiana, crying out in his sleep about a battle fought 70 years ago? What if the spirit of a young mother from another century found a voice in a little girl today, still grieving for the children she was forced to leave behind? This is not a theoretical question. This is the phenomenon at the heart of our search for truth. Around the world, there are thousands of documented cases of children who don't just believe in a past life, they remember it. They carry the emotional wounds, the specific knowledge, and the undying love of a person who has already lived and died. These testimonies are perhaps the most compelling evidence we have that consciousness is not an accident of biology. They are proof that a soul is not just an idea, but a tangible, enduring identity. Welcome to Life After Death Unveiled. Today, we are not asking if life goes on, we are exploring the evidence that proves how it continues in the clear, unwavering voices of those who have returned. The stories are as startling as they are profound, but to truly understand their significance, we must first step back from the individual accounts and look at the phenomenon itself. This isn't just folklore or a collection of random anecdotes. It is a consistent, observable pattern known to researchers as spontaneous past life memory. It almost always begins in early childhood, typically between the ages of 2 and 7, a time when the veil between worlds seems to be at its thinnest. A child, unprompted, will begin to speak of another life, another family, and another time, with a calm certainty that unnerves the adults around them. They speak not of a dream, but of a memory. And critically, this phenomenon does not belong to any single culture or religion. It transcends borders and belief systems. These accounts surface with remarkable consistency, from a Christian family in the American Midwest to a Druze village in the hills of Lebanon. From the bustling cities of Europe to the serene Buddhist communities of Southeast Asia. The details change, but the core experience remains the same. A young child becomes the living testament to a life they could not have possibly lived. This global consistency is what first captured the attention of the scientific community. For over 60 years, a dedicated group of scientists at respected universities has been working to move this subject from the realm of speculation into the light of methodical research. The epicenter of this work is a division of perceptual studies at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. It was here that a pioneering psychiatrist, Dr. Ian Stevenson, began a lifelong quest to investigate these cases with uncompromising scientific rigor. He didn't simply collect stories, he investigated them. His method, carried on today by his successor, Dr. Jim Tucker, involves meticulous documentation. The process is painstaking, conducting detailed interviews with the child and at least a dozen other witnesses, separating what the child said before any verification was attempted from what was learned later. And then, the crucial step of trying to identify the deceased person whose life the child is describing. This often involves searching through obscure records, birth and death certificates, newspaper archives, and even post-mortem reports. Over thousands of cases, their research has revealed distinct hallmarks of a genuine case. A majority of the children remember dying a sudden or violent death, suggesting that a traumatic end may be a key factor in carrying memories forward. Many children bear birthmarks or birth defects that uncannily match the fatal wounds of the person they claim to have been. And perhaps most tellingly, they often exhibit behaviors and phobias like a fear of water after recalling a drowning that are inexplicable in the context of their current life, but make perfect sense in the context of the life they remember. This global consistency is what first captured the attention of the scientific community. For over 60 years, a dedicated group of scientists at respected universities has been working to move this subject from the realm of speculation into the light of methodical research. The epicenter of this work is the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia School of Medicine.
The patterns are compelling. The research is rigorous. But the true power of this phenomenon lies within the stories themselves. These are not statistics or data points. They are human experiences, journeys of the soul, told through the clear, innocent voices of children. To listen to them is to touch the edge of eternity. We begin with a story of courage, sacrifice, and a memory so powerful it refused to be silenced by war. In the peaceful state of Louisiana, Bruce and Andrea Leininger were living a happy, ordinary life with their beloved 2-year-old son, James. But soon, their nights were no longer peaceful. Night after night, the home was shattered by the terrified screams of their little boy, thrashing in his bed, his small fists clenched as if he were trapped. He would scream the same chilling phrases. "Airplane crash on fire! Little man can't get out!" At first, his parents thought they were just nightmares, but then the details began to emerge in the daylight. While playing with his toy planes, James would crash them into the furniture, saying his plane had been shot down by the Japanese. He knew things a toddler couldn't possibly know. He knew that pilots flew off of boats, and when his mother called them boats, he corrected her with startling authority. "They're called aircraft carriers, Mommy." The details became more specific and more unbelievable. He said the name of his boat was the Natoma, and that he flew a Corsair plane. He told his father he had a friend on the boat named Jack Larson. Most hauntingly, he began signing his drawings not as James, but as James III, insisting that he was the third James. His father, Bruce, a man grounded in his Christian faith and a logical worldview, was deeply unsettled. He believed in one life, one soul, one heaven. This simply didn't fit. But the love for his son and the undeniable reality of his torment launched Bruce on an unexpected quest for the truth. He spent months, then years, scouring military archives, historical records, and online databases. His search felt impossible, but then a breakthrough. He discovered that an escort carrier named the USS Natoma Bay had in fact served in the Pacific during World War II. It was real. Digging deeper, he attended a reunion for the veterans of the Natoma Bay. There, he found a pilot who confirmed that a man named Jack Larson had also served on that very ship. The final, heart-stopping piece of the puzzle fell into place when Bruce found the records of a squadron that flew from the Natoma Bay. There, listed among the pilots who had been killed in action, was a young man from Pennsylvania. His name was James M. Huston, Jr. His plane, a Corsair, was shot down by Japanese anti-aircraft fire during a mission over Iwo Jima on March 3, 1945. He died in a fiery crash trapped in his cockpit, just as little James had described, night after night. For the Leininger family, the world would never be the same. The nightmares eventually faded, as James was able to tell his story, as if his soul simply needed someone to listen. This was not a story about the horror of war, but about the resilience of the human spirit. It was a testimony of a young hero, a soul whose courage was so immense that it echoed through time, finding a voice in a little boy in Louisiana, ensuring that his sacrifice and his existence would never be forgotten. It is a profound reminder that even in the face of the most violent end, the essence of who we are can and does endure. While some souls seem to carry the echoes of a traumatic end, others return with the vibrant, unmistakable imprint of a life fully and flamboyantly lived. Our journey now takes us from the battlefields of the Pacific to the dazzling lights of old Hollywood, through the eyes of a young boy in Oklahoma named Ryan Hammonds. From the age of 4, Ryan began having vivid, emotional outbursts, often crying and begging his mother, Cindy, to take him home. But his home wasn't in Oklahoma. His home, he insisted, was in Hollywood. He would talk for hours about his other, bigger house with a giant swimming pool, about his work in the movies, and about traveling the world on big boats. Cindy was baffled. Their family had no connection to Hollywood. Then one evening, while looking through a library book about the golden age of cinema, the moment of revelation arrived. Ryan pointed, his small finger trembling with excitement, at a black and white photo from the 1932 film Night After Night. In the photo stood 2 men. Ryan looked at his mother, his eyes wide with recognition, and said, "That's me, Mama. That's who I was." The man he pointed to was an uncredited extra, a face lost to time. But Ryan's memories were anything but forgotten. He began to pour out a torrent of specific, verifiable details about the man's life. He remembered dancing on Broadway stages in New York. He spoke of working for an agency where people would change their names. He recalled having 5 wives, a love for the sun and the ocean, and even remembered details about the man's death, insisting he was surprised when his heart stopped in the hospital. He knew the address of his Hollywood home was on a street with rocks in its name. The case was so extraordinary that it came to the attention of Dr. Jim Tucker. With the help of a film archivist, the identity of the forgotten man in the photo was finally uncovered. His name was Marty Martin, a one-time Broadway dancer who became a powerful Hollywood agent and lived a life of glamour and excess. The verifications were staggering. Marty Martin had indeed danced on Broadway. He did found a famous talent agency. He traveled the world. He was married not 5, but 4 times. A minor error, yet astoundingly close. His last address was 825 North Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills. But the most stunning validation was yet to come. Ryan had always insisted that he had 2 sisters. Marty Martin's own official records and even his surviving daughter said he only had 1. Ryan was adamant. Further genealogical research, prompted by the boy's insistence, later uncovered a second sister that even Martin's own daughter had never known about. A detail lost to the family was perfectly preserved in the mind of a small boy in Oklahoma. Ryan's story is a powerful message about the continuity of the self. It suggests that our unique personality, our talents, our passions, our complex life choices, and even our secrets are not erased by death. They are the unmistakable signature of our soul, an identity so distinct that it can re-emerge fully formed to tell its story once more. But what happens when the memory that endures is not one of fame or battle, but of a simple, profound love for a place and a family? This is the story of Cameron McCauley and a yearning for home that crossed the boundaries of a lifetime. From his home in Glasgow, Scotland, 2-year-old Cameron began to talk. But he didn't talk about Glasgow. He spoke constantly of his other life on a remote Scottish island called Barra. He spoke of his Barra mom and dad, his brothers, and a childhood that wasn't his own. His descriptions were filled with a deep, inconsolable nostalgia. He would cry, telling his Glasgow mother, Norma, how much he missed his old house, a single-story white house right on the beach. He remembered everything. He described planes landing on the sand right near his home. He remembered playing with his brothers and sisters in rock pools on the shore and the constant companionship of his favorite black and white dog. He even remembered his father's name, Shane Robertson, and how he had died after being hit by a car. For Cameron, this wasn't a fantasy. It was a source of real grief. The longing for his other family became so intense that Norma, with the help of Dr. Jim Tucker, made a courageous decision. They would make the journey to Bara. They would follow the memories of a 5-year-old boy to see where they would lead. The journey itself was transformative. As the small plane began its descent, Cameron grew excited, pointing out landmarks he recognized from the air. And then the plane did exactly what he had always said it would. It landed on a wide, sandy beach. They had arrived at his memory. The family drove around the island, searching for a place that existed only in a little boy's mind. And then they found it. Tucked away in a quiet bay was a single-story White House, just as he had described. As they walked towards it, they found the rock pools on the shore. Looking through old photographs with a local historian, they even found a picture of the family who used to holiday there, the Robertsons, complete with a black and white dog. Nearly every detail Cameron had held on to for years was suddenly tangibly real. But the most powerful moment was Cameron's own reaction. The usually chatty, exuberant boy fell silent. He stood there, quietly absorbing the place, a boy standing in two worlds at once, the present and a past that was undeniably his own. His homesickness finally began to fade. The journey had brought him peace. This profound, heartfelt connection to a past life is not a modern phenomenon. For our final testimony, our journey takes us back nearly a century to 1930s India and to one of the most famous and meticulously documented cases in history, the case of Shanti Devi. In a small home in Delhi, a 4-year-old girl began to make claims that startled her family. She insisted that her name was not Shanti, but Lugdibai, and that her real home was in a town called Mathura, over 100 miles away. She spoke with a local dialect that was foreign to her Delhi family and described her previous life with stunning clarity. She said her husband was a merchant named Kedar Nath. She described their home in Mathura, the layout of the streets, and the location of his shop. Most tragically, she recalled dying on the 10th day after giving birth to their son. The details were so persistent and specific that a family relative wrote a letter to the address Shanti had described. Incredibly, a man named Kedar Nath wrote back, confirming that his young wife, Lugdibai, had indeed died in childbirth several years prior, exactly as the little girl had said. The story became so renowned that it captured the attention of Mahatma Gandhi, who established a commission of respected community leaders to investigate. The commission escorted the young Shanti Devi on a train to Mathura. Upon arriving, her memories exploded into real-time recognition. She directed the driver through the unfamiliar streets with perfect accuracy, leading them straight to her former home. In a crowd of people, she immediately identified Kedar Nath, her past life husband, and broke down in tears. Later, to test her further, Kedar Nath brought her before his son, the boy whose birth had led to her death. He asked if she recognized him. Shanti wept, embracing the boy she had never been able to hold. She went on to recount intimate details of their married life, including the location of a hidden box of money and private conversations only the two of them could have known. She even gently chastised her former husband for remarrying, reminding him of a promise he had made to her on her deathbed. Shanti Devi's case, verified by a commission of impartial observers, stands as a monumental piece of evidence. But more than that, it is a story about the enduring power of love and commitment. It speaks to a love so determined that it would cross the veil of death itself, to seek reunion, to find closure, and to prove with unwavering certainty that the promises made by the heart are truly eternal. The individual stories are powerful, each a universe of experience unto itself. But when we step back and view them together, remarkable patterns begin to emerge, like constellations taking shape in the night sky. These are not random occurrences. They are recurring signatures, hallmarks that point toward a deeper truth about the journey of the soul. What, then, are these testimonies, taken together, truly telling us. The first and most striking pattern is how often these memories are tied to a sudden or traumatic death, a plane crash, a fire, a murder, a fatal accident. Why would this be? Perhaps a life that ends peacefully, with a sense of completion, is able to transition gently, its energy dissolving back into the whole. But perhaps a life that is cut short, with unfinished business, unresolved emotions, and the shock of a sudden departure, leaves a more potent, energetic imprint. It's as if the sheer force of that final experience acts as a vessel, preserving the consciousness within it, carrying the essence of that life across the threshold. Then there are the physical signs, the birthmarks and birth defects that so uncannily match the wounds of the previous life. Researchers like Dr. Stevenson meticulously documented cases where autopsy reports of a deceased individual perfectly corresponded to the birthmarks on a child claiming to be their reincarnation. It is a concept that challenges our material understanding of the world, suggesting that the soul's memory can be made visible on the skin, a physical echo of a past trauma, a map of a journey etched onto a new body, providing tangible proof that the person who endured that wound is the same person who has now returned. And finally, there are the emotional echoes, the inexplicable phobias and attachments. A child who has never had a negative experience with water exhibits a paralyzing fear of it, all while describing a past life drowning. A toddler shows an innate talent for a specific activity, like dancing or flying, that belonged to the previous personality. These are not learned behaviors. They feel like soul-deep instincts, the emotional and behavioral residue of a life that still resonates within. To explore these ideas fully requires an open heart, but it also requires an honest mind, one that acknowledges the questions and doubts that naturally arise in a world that operates on physical proof. Skeptics, with sound logic, will propose alternative explanations. They will speak of cryptomnesia, the idea that a child may have overheard or seen information and forgotten the source, later believing it to be a memory. They will suggest the possibility of parental influence, or a child's vivid imagination weaving fantasies that adults mistake for reality. They will point to the long arm of coincidence. These are reasonable questions, and in some weaker cases, they may hold the answer, but they falter in the face of the strongest evidence. How does a child's imagination account for knowledge of a foreign language or a specific regional dialect they have never been exposed to? How does parental influence explain the Ryan Hammond's case, where a child revealed a family secret, the existence of a second sister that the living family members didn't even know themselves? How can coincidence explain not one or two matching details, but 55? How does it explain a birthmark in the precise shape and location of a fatal shotgun wound documented in a confidential autopsy report? The most compelling cases present details that are so specific, so obscure, and so personal that they defy these conventional explanations. And it is in that space, beyond easy dismissal, that a deeper possibility takes root. As we have seen, these stories are not built on single shaky claims, but on a vast web of interconnected, verifiable facts. And for those who are searching for hope, the fact that a story cannot be entirely dismissed is, itself, a door left open. And it is through that open door that the most important message can be heard, a message not of paranormal mystery, but of profound, transformative healing. For anyone who has ever sat by a bedside and held a hand for the last time, for anyone who has felt the crushing silence in a home that was once filled with laughter, these stories are more than just remarkable. They are a lifeline. They offer a perspective on death that is not rooted in the finality of loss, but in the promise of continuity. They whisper a truth that our hearts long to hear, that our connection with those we love does not end when their physical body does. To know that our loved ones may not have vanished into nothingness, but simply started a new chapter in their eternal journey, can lift the immense weight of grief. It reframes our sorrow, turning a permanent goodbye into a temporary farewell. This is the ultimate promise that echoes through the voices of these children. It is the confirmation that love does not die with the body, because love is not of the body. It is the energy of the soul itself. The connections we forge, the love we give and receive, become an indelible part of who we are, an essence that time cannot erode and death cannot erase. We are not truly alone. The souls we have loved, and the souls who have loved us, are woven into the eternal fabric of existence, forever a part of us, and perhaps waiting to be found again. We have journeyed through battlefields and ballrooms, across oceans and decades, all guided by the clear, unwavering voices of children. With their unfiltered innocence, they have become profound, if unintentional, messengers for us all. They come not to prove a complex doctrine, or to demand that we believe a new dogma. They come to remind us of a truth so simple it is often overlooked in our search for answers, that life is a continuous, unbroken flow. The evidence they present, the marks they carry on their skin, the love they still feel for families they've never met, the knowledge they couldn't have possibly learned, is ultimately not a story about death. It is the story of the indestructible nature of consciousness. It is the story of love's powerful refusal to forget. And so, perhaps death is not the wall we have been taught to fear, but simply a horizon, a limit not to our existence, but only to our sight. The people we have loved are not lost to us. They are merely ahead on a path that we too are destined to walk. So hold on to that hope. Let it be a quiet comfort in your moments of grief and a gentle light in your times of doubt. Because in the end, after all the evidence has been weighed and all the stories have been told, we are left with that one eternal truth, that love is the immortal energy connecting us all. It is the light that guides every soul on its magnificent, unending journey home.